So when you think of WordPerfect these days, you probably don't think of Linux. But believe it or not, there was actually a Linux version of this program, and not only that, but an entire distro for it to run on. This is Corel Linux, first released in 1999 as an alternative to Windows and Mac OS. And thanks to the folks over at Free Geek Twin Cities who sold me this copy, we're going to be checking it out today and see how it runs on the good old 98 PC. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So WordPerfect is not something that gets a whole lot of use today, unless you work in a law office or just a company that has stuck with this software for the past however many years. But for a short time back in the 80s, it was the word processor to use. Back then it was developed and maintained by the appropriately named WordPerfect Corporation, but ownership of the application changed hands a few times over the years. First being sold to Novell, then to Corel, who currently does business under the name Aludo. And yes, they still sell WordPerfect today. You can buy a copy for $250, which, hey, it's not a subscription, so I'll give them that. Corel Linux, on the other hand, lived a very short life. This thing only lasted for around 2 years, and ultimately wasn't able to gather enough of a user base for Corel to justify keeping it around, which I'm sure is a story you've heard numerous times before because this was the height of Microsoft's monopoly over the x86-based computer market. But at the time, the tech press praised Corel Linux as being a very capable alternative to Windows, with InfoWorld calling it ideal for desktops and the first Linux, in fact first Unix of any kind, that can realistically take the place of a Windows or Macintosh desktop. Now this was for a few reasons. Its GUI, making use of a modified version of KDE, was laid out in a similar fashion to Windows, so as to make the transition for new users relatively simple. Corel also chose to limit the amount of pre-installed packages and applications, which might sound like sacrilege to a seasoned Linux user, but this was done so as not to overwhelm new users with a long list of programs in the applications menu, and focus on the necessary inclusions that shared a similar user interface. One of those being, of course, the WordPerfect Office suite. Now this was pretty big at the time because Linux did not have a mainstream piece of Office productivity software compatible with it. You had things like Star Office out there, but for a WordPerfect user who was thinking of switching to Linux but didn't want to have to ditch using WordPerfect, this opened up a whole new band of users that might be willing to ditch Windows. And on top of all that, Corel Linux was available as a free download from the company's website, but they also sold both a standard and deluxe version for $60 and $90 respectively. And somewhere along the way, this select version was released, which is the one that I have here. Unfortunately though, information about this version has been hard to track down, so I'm not sure how much it originally sold for. But this select version did have a few things that were in the deluxe version, notably this free Linux Penguin mascot toy thing. Though it was actually labeled specifically as not being a toy. This was a little like plastic thing. I thought it was a plushie at first, which would have been cooler, I think, but hey, it's still a nice inclusion. Unfortunately, it is missing from here, so we don't have it. I would show it to you otherwise, but yeah. Everything else, though, is in this box from what I can tell, and I will just go around the box briefly. So on the front here, it talks about a few highlighted features of it. On the side, we have a chart that does a comparison between the select version and the free downloadable one. So you've got notably a copy of the light version of WordPerfect 8 for Linux. You've got Netscape Communicator, Adobe Acrobat Reader, an IM client. You got some fonts, technical support, a user's guide, so some pretty nice stuff in here. On the back here, I just want to briefly highlight the file manager because this was not just the regular KDE file manager. This was designed to look more like Windows Explorer, and it could also access Windows network shares, which was pretty useful for the Windows user switching over to this. You also got your minimum system requirements, which we certainly meet. And yeah, let's just go ahead and open it up and we'll take a look at what you would have received in this package. First off, we have a boot diskette, which we actually don't need for the 98 PC. This is just for systems that cannot boot off of a CD-ROM on their own. You can see this was actually it's a re-stickered disk, so I can see there's a label behind this one, so they just repurposed an old floppy disk for that. We have 3 CDs here. We got the installation CD-ROM. We have the open circulation CD-ROM, which I believe is the free downloadable version. So you got that in here too. And you have the source code as well. You've got a root directory. This is just like a, little pamphlet of various, promotions and stuff for Linux software and hardware. We'll come back to this in a moment. Right here you have your serial number and like registration card, I think. Yep. Right here we've got a support chart that tells you what kind of support you get, and you can upgrade to like 24/7 support if you want. And yeah, it just tells you to register now. And you have your big ol' user's guide, which is, let's see how many pages this is, 355 pages. So yeah, definitely a beefy guide to read through, but of course very typical for this time. Now this root directory pamphlet, I just like looking through these because it's neat to just see these old advertisements and stuff. But notably, here is one for WordPerfect Office 2000, the full Office suite that they had for Linux. And over here you've got one for the software that you just bought, so they just advertised Corel Linux there. But the reason I open this up is I want to show you towards the end here, there is an advertisement for the Netwinder computer. The neat thing about this is it was actually a Linux box sold by Corel, though it does predate the release of Corel Linux. In fact, Corel Linux can't even run on this because this utilizes an ARM-based CPU. And by the time Corel Linux was released, they had sold this to Rebel.com, who you can see is mentioned here at the bottom of this advertisement. So it tells you a little bit about it here. And yeah, it would be really neat to try and find one of these, though I imagine they're a little bit difficult to find. I wasn't able to find one just doing a search on eBay or anything, but who knows, maybe one will come up at some point. But yeah, that is everything in this root directory, and that is everything that comes with this copy of Corel Linux Select. So let's go ahead and pop in the installation CD-ROM and get this show on the road. Alright, so we got the install disk popped in the drive, and we are set to go. Just to go over the specifications, this does require at least a Pentium processor, which we got a Pentium 3, at least 24 megabytes of RAM. They do recommend 64. We're at half a gigabyte, so we got maybe a little bit too much RAM. We'll see how it handles that. And 500 megabytes of hard disk space. We are using one of those 4 gigabyte CF cards. So we'll just restart, and I know this doesn't need the boot disk because I did cheat a little bit and I booted from the disk before, so you can see here it is starting up. And here we are at the installer, which is really nice. It's all graphical, very easy to go through. So we're just going to put in our username. We're going to show advanced install options to select the packages that we want manually. So we'll go to custom here. They got a few different configurations, kind of like how Windows does with like typical, custom, all that. You've got those different settings here, but we'll go with custom because it will give us a list of applications. And we're just going to grab everything because we got plenty of space for it. So it'll slowly select everything there for us. And we're just going to take over the entire disk just to keep this simple. I don't have to dual boot this or anything. But we could edit the partition table. In fact, let me just see if this is the partition table editor that I've seen before. Okay, well it is graphical, which is nice. So we do have a DOS partition on here right now. I think I installed MS-DOS on this partition, or on this drive at one point. So yeah, you can view the disk properties and everything, so that's nice, but we're just going to keep it simple, take over the whole disk. Yes, we want to remove all information on the drive, and it gives you a summary here. Sure, we'll scan for bad blocks while formatting, and we'll install. And we're off to the races, so it's time just to sit back and let it do its thing. Alright, so the install completed successfully. It tells us to remove the floppy disk if we used it. We're just going to click OK, and we'll let it restart. And as it's restarting, I'll pop out the CD-ROM. Oh, never mind, it's just going to do it for us. That's nice. Let's see what this OS is all about. I'm pretty excited. I mean, I've never used this before. Yeah, I just realized I have not mentioned that yet. I've never used Corel Linux, so this will be neat to just explore, what this is all about. We're just going to go with option 1 here. And, yeah, we'll see if it's able to recognize all of our hardware and get proper drivers installed. We might run into some issues with that, especially with the video card, because it is much newer than the operating system itself. Alright, and here we are at the login screen. Now, there's been a bit of a jump cut here because I had to actually swap out the video card in the 98 PC because the one that I had installed, which is that FX5200, was giving me a bunch of display problems. Not surprisingly, like I mentioned, this card is newer than the operating system. And even the internal graphics adapter was causing problems as well. It wasn't displaying anything properly. So I've switched over to an old S3 video card, and you can see that we have a login screen here, which is great. Although apparently the yeah, my mouse and keyboard are not being detected though. Let me do a quick restart here. Alright, that's much better. So one thing I will say is this system does take a while to start up, but we're going to log into just my user account, which I did not set a password for. In fact, you couldn't even set a password for it during the setup. And we're just going to click login. It should give us a prompt to change our password. And yep, there it is. So it's a good practice to have a password, so I'll just put a super secure one on my account here. But yeah, here's Corel Linux in all of its glory. We got some shortcuts here on the desktop. We got your applications menu down here, your taskbar, got a few things pinned to it. You can also get rid of the taskbar by just clicking this hide button right here, and it slides to the left side. Which is a much cooler way of hiding the taskbar than how you hide the taskbar in Windows. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually change the screen resolution to make everything a little bit more readable for you guys. And you can do that just like you can in Windows by right-clicking on the desktop and go into Properties, and that brings up your Display Properties panel. And we're going to go to Video Settings here, and we'll bump the resolution down to 800 by 600. We'll apply that. And after a quick restart of the X server, you can see that here we are at that new resolution, so we can see everything a little bit better, which is nice. So yeah, we're just going to go through these applications and see you know, what we've got on here. I see GIMP, so you know we're going to have to mess around with that. But I think we're going to start out with WordPerfect, since this was, you know, really a major inclusion in here, and one of the big selling points of this entire operating system. Not just WordPerfect, but the entire suite of WordPerfect software that was available for it. So we can, you know, write, I don't know, hello world, do kind of our standard text document here. Increase this, you know, we can add colors and all that, and gloriousness. And we can save this, of course, as a standard WordPerfect 6x7/8 document, and we'll just pop that into, yeah, our home folder. Why not? Just call it document 1. Now, something really interesting about WordPerfect and just Corel Linux in general is that Corel made contributions to the Wine project, and that's actually how they ported their Office suite over to Linux, or at least the WordPerfect application itself. Now, there is a little bit of conflicting information about this, and in fact, the only source that I can track this down to is Wikipedia, and there's no, like, source attributed to this piece of text on the Wikipedia page for Corel Linux, but according to it, all of the other WordPerfect Office applications were not actually natively written for Linux, and they were just run under Wine, which is rather interesting if that's actually true. But again, take that with a grain of salt, because it's just from Wikipedia with no source attributed to that piece of text. But Corel did make contributions to the Wine project. There were articles in the tech press about it. In fact, Corel reaffirmed their commitment to the Wine project after they announced a partnership with another company called Graphon. Now, Graphon sold a piece of connectivity software that basically allowed you to run Windows applications remotely from a non-Windows system, and Corel was going to implement that into Corel Linux in the next release. And from what it sounds like, it would have allowed you to have just a Windows system off somewhere, and you could run applications from that computer, but just access them from your Corel Linux installation. And when they announced that partnership, a lot of people thought they were ditching Wine. They said they weren't going to ditch Wine until, of course, they did, when they just shuttered the entire operating system and sold it to Xandros. Now, Xandros was another software company who used Corel Linux as a base for their own operating system called Xandros Desktop. And the notable thing about that is it was one of the default operating system choices for the Asus ePC. So yeah, if you bought one of those things, I think it was like the first generation ones. You could choose between Windows XP or Xandros Desktop, and I imagine most people just chose Windows XP. So yeah, there's some interesting pieces of information. But yeah, WordPerfect, it was on Linux, and it was free. You could actually download WordPerfect 8 for Linux from Corel's website. It was, you know, just like the base version of the operating system, it was downloadable for free. And what's interesting is that listing does not mention it being a light version, but on the box here, again, it does on this side chart. So I think maybe the light version is just referring to the fact that it's only WordPerfect and not the entire Office suite, maybe. Because you can see it's not branded as WordPerfect 8 Lite anywhere in here in the software itself. It's just called WordPerfect 8 for Linux. Now, the full-on WordPerfect Office suite cost $109 for the standard edition and $159 for the deluxe edition. And those packages became available in April of 2000 at the earliest, so it did take a little while for those to come out. I say the earliest because that's the earliest snapshots on the Wayback Machine of Corel's store page where those are actually listed. Yeah, oh, I think the system just locked up. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't do anything. It just straight up locked up. Wow, okay, that's unfortunate. I might have to restart this computer again for like the 5th time. So just going through this stuff, even for Corel Linux having like a more limited selection of applications, there's still a pretty good amount of stuff in here. I mean, especially under games, you got a ton of games in here. But then you get like to graphics, you know, you have GIMP and PS Viewer, 2 things. Multimedia, you have 1 CD player, a media player, MIDI/karaoke player, sound mixer panels. You got like a few things in here. Netscape Communicator got that whole suite. Under network, you've got a chat client, a news client, some dial-up stuff. Under system, you've got the Corel Updater for getting, you know, new versions of packages and everything. And then at the bottom here, we've got Acrobat Reader. Now, I talked about the file manager before, how this is not just like the standard KDE file manager. This has been modified. It's called the Corel File Manager, and it's laid out a little bit more like a Windows Explorer. You've got like a tree over here on the left side. You can go and you see you've got your devices here. If I had anything in the CD-ROM or the floppy drive, you know, they would show up here. And we can just browse through. You know, obviously it's still like the Linux file structure and everything, but you know, they've tried to make this pretty easy to navigate for somebody coming over from Windows. You may have also noticed down here at the bottom right in the system tray, we do have a multiple desktop switcher, which is super nice. Of course, pretty standard for like I think every Linux distro from this time, it seems, but certainly was not a thing on Windows by default. So yeah, that's nice. We've got your, you know, system clock down here. You can also get to your display settings right from there. We were just in here a little bit earlier on in the video. Why don't we change? Let's see what wallpapers we got in here. So we got a few Corel Linux ones. In fact, are all of these? Like, okay, no, we got a bunch of like, you know, just photos and renderings and stuff. So we got like, actually all of these look like renderings. A lot of these might just be in KDE. Oh, there's the startup gradient. This actually looks pretty nice. Oh, and that message that came up, by the way, was just saying that if we changed any like resolution settings, we have to restart the X server for those to take effect. But we don't have to do that for desktop wallpapers, so that's nice. But yeah, this is the you know, background we have on the login screen as well. So that's pretty nice. But let's go ahead and apply one of these Corel Linux ones. Yeah, there's a good selection of these Corel Linux wallpapers in here. They all look kind of cool. They're very big on these blocks, which, I mean, it is in the logo, so that's not really surprising. But yeah, I don't know. Why don't we set it to, let's see what 8 is. Yeah, let's go with that one. Why not? So get that same message about the X server, and yeah, we got some screensavers as well. Yeah, some of these kind of look like Windows Media Player visualizations, just a lot less detailed though, but that's kind of funny. Got some color settings, even a BOS color scheme. That's pretty cool. So yeah, Windows 95. How does this one differ from, I think it's like pretty, yeah, it's like the same as the, oh, no, the KDE default is a little bit different. But that's cool that you got a BOS one. You don't see that every day. And of course, you have your display settings over here as well. So we'll just close out of that. Yeah, you are able to, you know, pin things to the taskbar here. So, you know, you got your file manager. It's actually, this kind of reminds me how like Windows 7 has things pinned to the taskbar, but they are, this is like a little quick launch area, and your actual taskbar is over here. So we can just go to configure here, and we can just configure the K panel. That's, I guess, what this whole thing is called. Move to the top of the screen if we want to. So if you were more of a Mac OS user, you might want to have it at the top. You can change the position of the actual taskbar. We can make it hidden, I guess, entirely. Have it on top, bottom. I guess that'll be, yeah, like on top of the quick launch and everything, which I actually kind of like it that way, because we can, I don't know, I'm just used to always going over here to the left to like get back to Windows and stuff. What is top left? I'll just move it up there. Yeah, that's right. So that kind of reminds me of BOS. Just, of course, the menu is normally over here on the top right by default. We'll just put it back into the panel for now. And you can change the style of it. You can make it like super small or super large. Let's just go back with normal here. Now we should have options. Okay, so it looks like we can't. Okay, well, we can rename the desktops though. Can make 8 desktops visible. Yeah, why not? Can we just drag items to this? Yes, we can. So we can just drag Netscape like that. Maybe we want WordPerfect down here. So, you can customize your quick launch. Say you don't use the help, we can just right click on that to remove it. Now, I did say that we'd have to check out GIMP, and I think I'm going to make true on that promise. So we'll open up GIMP here, and do we have to install GIMP? Huh, okay, I guess we do. Alright, installation successful, so that just had to, I guess, extract some stuff. The GIMP 1.0.2. It's just funny seeing it called the GIMP, but it makes sense because GIMP is short for GNU Image Manipulation Platform, so the GIMP, that does make grammatical sense, but it's just, I'm so used to calling it GIMP, as I'm sure most people are. So we'll make a new, I don't know, 500 by 500 file here, and yeah, RGB... that kind of works for me. We'll just bring this over here. And I don't know, let's maybe get some blue going on here. And let's just, I don't know, get some gradients going. Actually, I'm going to make this a yellow. Let's kind of do sort of like the desktop wallpaper here. We got this blue to orange-ish gradient. And I don't know, maybe add some text. Yeah, let's go with the New Century School Book. That looks pretty awesome, doesn't it? So we'll hit OK. Have this in here. Oh, we gotta change this text. We gotta add like a line break here. If we can we not add a line break, really? Shift enter? Control enter? No? Well, I think I screwed that up. I was trying to select this one to go back in and just get rid of some of it, and then use the second one that we just created to, continue the the sentence there. But, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it that way, because that's kinda, I mean, as Bob Ross would say, there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. Why don't we make a lovely green spherical shape here, and we'll just fill that up and move that around some. Not the whole background. I guess we can't really... I'm like doing Control D. Like, no, I don't want to get rid of... Wait, I guess I just made a copy of it. Yeah, I want to close out of it. I was doing Control D to deselect. That just... Oh, yeah, it duplicates it. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, this is just showing that I've, like, never used GIMP before, for an extended period of time anyways. Yeah, that looks good to me. Why don't we, save that to, I don't know, our desktop? We'll just save it as a PNG, and we'll just call this cool. And there it is on the desktop. If we really want to, I don't know, make this our desktop wall. You know what? I'm not going to do that, because that would just be awful. I really like this. I really like this desktop wallpaper. I don't want to ruin it. But, yeah, I mean, overall, like, that is, I think that's a pretty good look at, what we've got on here. I mean, of course, I didn't go into every single one of these programs, because most of them are pretty self-explanatory. And there's a lot of this stuff that, all these games are pretty much standard KDE games, like Smiletris, Sokoban. I think this, yeah, about KDE. So this is another KDE game. I would imagine, yeah, K-Sokoban. So, I mean, I do love me some Sokoban. I've talked about Microsoft Cheese Terminator, the very funnily named Sokoban clone that Microsoft released in Poland back in the 1990s as a bit of a promotional thing. And overall, I am pretty impressed with this. I think this would have been a great distro for, somebody who, like I mentioned, the target audience of this was like Windows users who used Corel software and wanted to maybe try out Linux. This would have been absolutely perfect for those people. And this was just the first iteration of it. I mean, by the time the second edition came out, you had that Graphon connectivity software implemented into it that allowed you to run Windows programs, you know, remotely. Of course, Wine was a thing too. You could always download that and run it on here to get Windows programs running that way. And with Corel contributing to it, I mean, that was pretty huge. And I would have imagined if they had stuck with this distro and kept it around for longer than they did, you would have probably seen more of Corel software, you know, later versions of WordPerfect and all their other Office stuff be, you know, ported over to Linux, or at least, you know, be able to be run through Wine pretty well. But yeah, oh, there's the screensaver starting up. Look at that. But yeah, overall, I mean, I give this a thumbs up. I'm pretty impressed with it. And if you enjoyed this video, maybe you want to give it a thumbs up as well. Maybe get subscribed or consider becoming a patron or a channel member to get early access to these videos before anybody else. But either way, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next video.